Hi there guys, Tom Quell here for Sound Effects Premiere in Ormskirk, back again with another demo, and this time I'm checking out this beast of a product. Now this is the Boss Waza Head. Okay, this is actually the 150 watt head version of Boss's custom shop, Japanese made, really high-end amplifier. And this uses the same tube logic kind of technology, if you like, which I'll talk about later, as the Blues Cube products, all the high-end products that Boss have been using recently or kind of selling recently. And it's really a beautiful looking and beautiful sounding product. I've been really blown away by this. I must admit, for a solid state amp, I was quite skeptical at first, especially given that this is not a cheap product at all. This is sort of over the £2,000 mark for the head alone. But considering how long I've been playing this, probably about an hour now, I'm really blown away by how it sounds and feels. The first thing I'm going to say before we go through any of the specs is just take any biases out of your mind now between tube amps and solid state amps. Have a listen to how the amp sounds, and I can tell you that it feels great. And just really go on what the amplifier kind of, the tones that you're going to hear. This is a really impressive sounding and feeling product. And I really want to stress that because people are going to immediately have biases about tube amplifiers and solid state amplifiers. Put that out the window and have an open mind, and you'll really get that this is a fantastic sounding product. And I don't want to do that just as a sales pitch. I really do think this sounds superb and feels superb. Okay, so one of the other interesting things about this amplifier is it really is the first professional level Boss amplifier product. If you think about some of the other ones, they've had Roland written on them. And there is a distinction there, especially in people's minds. Although Boss make great products, this really is the first one that's aimed at the professional user. And hence that's reflected in the price point, but also in the quality of sound on offer. And again, it's that thing of, wipe your slate clean, your biases clean in terms of, what you've heard from not just Boss, but solid state products in general, and get that in your mind that this is a professional level product and it's really worth trying out. So the amplifier itself is basically set up with this beautiful carbon fiber style finish, and that's both on the head and on the cab. The cab is a 4x12 cab, and it's designed to give you the sound of really well broken in speakers from an old school 4x12 cab that's been gigged extensively. There's a huge amount of R&D that's gone into the amp and the cab itself. And what Boss have done is they've taken every single component that goes into an amplifier, into a speaker, into the actual the housing of the actual cab, and they've looked at how does this component affect the signal chain? How do these components running into each other affect the signal chain? But the level of detail they've gone to is pretty remarkable, really. So it's been quite a few years in the making, but now it's out. It's really given Boss this kind of, again, the Waza Craft kind of label of custom shop. This is really a high-end professional product. So the actual amplifier itself has effectively 4 channels. It comes with a foot switch, so you can switch between those 4 channels. And the way it works is we've got clean, crunch, lead 1 and lead 2 with sort of expanding levels of gain for those. Lead 1 and lead 2, they're basically voiced the same, but you can change the amount of gain that you've got within each of those, so you can set it up as 2 different lead channels. So 4 channels in there. The clean and the crunch share this EQ section here. You've obviously got the standard kind of controls. Each channel has a gain and a volume, and the way they work is you would have the gain you can think of as the preamp section, so how much preamp drive or saturation from the preamp tubes do you want, and then the volume control, which is on every single channel. All of the channels share those 2 controls, gain and volume. The volume control is like the power stage, so you do want to saturate those power tubes. And then, as I say, the clean and crunch have a shared EQ section, so we've got bass, middle, treble, presence for the power stage, so that's like adding high end after the actual preamp stage. And then we've got reverb, a beautiful digital reverb, the same as you'll find in the Blues Cube, and there's tons of it, very musical, very natural sounding, so very cool. And then the lead 1 and lead 2, again, we've got gain and volume, so you can saturate the preamp or saturate the power amp, or both, if you so desire. Unbelievable amounts of gain available here. Definitely voiced in that kind of 80s shred territory, but it can also sound very modern, and it reacts well to volume control changes, as you'll see in a second. And again, bass, middle, treble, presence, and a reverb. And then we've got this master control. And the master you can think of, with normal amps, what you'd find is as you turn the master up, you're saturating the power tubes. But because you've got these two controls here, and you can control the combination of pre and power amp gain that you want, the master is really just an overall master volume. That means that you can get that power tube saturation at lower volumes. Very, very useful indeed. Okay, so a couple more controls to go through. We'll get through this bit last, but these controls here, cabinet resonance is giving you 3 different types of resonance voices, if you like, for the actual cab. So we've got, and this works through the cab, it's not just a thing for DIs, this will actually revoice the speakers in the cab for you. So we've got vintage, which is my favourite for clean tones, and we've got the modern, which basically adds more thunk into the bottom end, makes it sound more like a modern cab, obviously. And then deep, scoops the mid slightly and punches on the top end and the low end. So if you want that kind of really aggressive, scooped, modern sound, that's what you'll get from that. And then the power control. So this is 150 watts, and that's proper 150 watts. That's not like some people would think like a solid state amp, you need 1,000 watts of power to drive a solid state amp. This is 150 watts of tube style volume. Believe me, this is obscenely loud. So you can go from 1 watt over to the left. So for recording, if you want to mic this thing up, we've mic'd it with an SM57. If you really want to push the back end, you can do that and it's not obscenely loud. And we've got 50 watts, 100 watts, and max. I love the way they've called it max. They haven't just written 150 watts, it's like max. Full on power at 11 basically. So it's super loud, but you've got those 4 different stages of volume. Now we've got it set to 50 watts. I will demonstrate some of the other ones as well because they allow you to saturate the tone slightly differently on the back end, which is very cool. 2 effects loops, A and B. These are switchable like this. So 2 effects loops is useful if you want to run effects in parallel, for instance. If you want to run your reverbs and your delays separately, you don't want to blend them into each other, you can do that, or you could run all your modulations in one, your time-based effects in another. Very pro feature, very nice indeed. Obviously you've got your power switch, and then over here we've got amplifier internal A and B. Now if you remember the Blues Cube, Roland developed these tone capsules which basically look like little tubes that you can insert into the back of the amplifier. Now at the moment there's only a couple of these tubes that are actually available for this that will revoice the amplifier. We've got the brown sound one in there, which is obviously based on that kind of Eddie classic sound. That would be selected via A, and you can see there's a little blue tube glowing in here, hopefully. There's nothing in this one, but at the moment there's also a Steve Vai one that's available. Steve has voiced his own sounds, so you could stick that in there, and then you can switch between those, and it effectively turns it into a different amplifier. It alters that component circuitry kind of I don't want to use the word modelling because it's not, it works slightly differently, it's their own tube logic kind of design, but it affects the way all of those components interact with each other at that component level. So we'll leave it on internal for the minute, and then we've got this line out airfield. Now we'll go through that, we're going to DI later on. At the moment this is actually just mic'd up with an SM57 on one of the 4x12 speakers. So we'll do the DI later, and this changes the way it sounds. The key here, obviously, I've rambled on for ages, is to have a listen to how it sounds. And I want you to listen really for 2 things. First of all, a dynamic response, which you'll only hear from me, but you've got to take my word for it. It feels superb to play. Get that solid state thing versus tube out of your mind. And have a listen to the quality of the tone as well. As I say, we'll do both things. We'll mic up with an SM57 and let you hear the DI'd sound as well, because there's a USB on the back that makes it function like a sound card, so very useful indeed. So starting with the clean channel. So you can see the clean LED is on there. I've selected it on the foot switch. I'll show you the foot switch later. Volume is all the way up, so I'm really pushing the power stage. Gain about halfway, so we're going to get a beautiful dynamic, on edge of breakup kind of sound. And then we've got bass, middle, treble and presence just under halfway, and then the reverb about halfway up. Again, we're in 50 watt mode. Let's set this to vintage because it's my favourite and I get to choose, and we get this. immediately I expected this amplifier to feel stiff, you know, like you expect with solid states. My solid state bias went on. It's not at all. It's really, really dynamic and responsive to play. It feels beautiful. It's not got any of that kind of, as I say, stiffness that you expect with some of these solid state style amplifiers. It just feels exactly the same as playing my favorite amplifier. I'm so impressed. So if we deal with these controls here with the clean channel, again, if I run through everything, we'll be here for days. So I'm going to try and do this fairly quickly. So if I increase the gain, back off on the volume, again, what you're going to find is that obviously because I've pushed the preamp now, we get slightly more saturated sound. Well, not saturated, but it's going to break up more. But we've backed down on the volume control. So there the bottom end is kicked in. So let's compensate by pulling out some of the bass. Just drop the master slightly, and we get this. Bring that down, push up the output stage, and then increase the master. It responds just as you'd expect. You pull out some of the kind of flubbiness from the preamp stage, and you get this beautiful, crystal clean, dynamic, clean sound. Now, if I go to 150 watt mode, hopefully I won't kill the camera. Check out how clean that is. That is a beautiful clean tone that rivals most of the, if not all of the kind of high-end amplifiers I've heard from the tube domain. Let's put it that way. So very impressive. Now, if we move into the crunch channel, again, it's got its own preamp and volume controls, or gain and volume controls. We can do it via the foot switch, or we can do it via the press control here. So, again, in terms of the setup, nothing's changed EQ-wise. I'm going to go back to 50 watt mode and bring my master back down to halfway so I don't kill the camera. So we could add some presence into the top end, so on and so forth. Let's also play with bringing the gain down and the preamps and the power amp stage up. Hear the way that's opened up now? It's a little bit more dynamic as well. Now check out in terms of the pick attack how this works. If I just bring that master down a touch again, we're playing a fine balancing game here between having the output loud enough so that we actually get the real sound of the amp and not clipping the front end of the camera. So we get this. Check out the pick dynamics. Roll off the volume, go to the neck pickup. So very, very impressive. Again, just feels like a really high-end amplifier. Very, very cool indeed. So if we go to lead one, now lead one and lead two, if I just go back to the clean while I'm talking so we haven't got the hiss. Lead one and lead two, again, same gain structure, but you can change the amount of gain for each one. So think of it as two separate lead channels that are voiced very similarly. Okay, so we've got the gain halfway up here, the volume about halfway up, and again, the master's not changed. This time though, I'm going to move between this section here so you can hear the difference. Okay, so let's start out again with the bridge pickup on lead one. Again, check out how much gain there is. But the really important thing I want you to check out here is check out the thunk in the bottom end. And I really hope this is coming through the SM57. Super impressive, very tight, very dynamic, and that thunk is very impressive. And we can make that even more impressive by switching the resonance to mod. That is too cool. I love it. It's amazing. So if we now go to deep, I'm getting too excited. I'm forgetting all the options. If we go to deep, again, listen to how this has changed the resonance. There's a little bit of a kind of dip in the mids. It's ridiculous. I love it. So cool. Again, all of the things you'd expect an amp of this type with that much gain, like an old school stack, that classic rock stack sound, this does in spades. It's just ridiculous. It's incredible, really. So that's the cabinet resonance. Again, you could switch in effects loops for each of those. I'll just really quickly play with the EQ so you can hear it. It functions the same for each channel. But if I roll the bass down, now what you'll find is, like all good EQ controls, as you roll, there's a sweet spot, you'll hit that sweet spot and then the EQ control really starts to kick in. And you can hear that with this bass here. It's a sign of a good EQ control. Same with the mids, although I like the bass up, so we'll leave that like that. Love it. Okay, treble control. It's nuts. It just sounds so great in every single setting, and that's the key, really. What you've got here is a Boss product, if I go back to clean, that is professional through and through and through. Everything sounds great. You struggle to find a bad sound on this amplifier, and I think that's one of the things that's impressed me the most in terms of, you know, you expect something like this to have some compromises because you think of Boss products are great, but they're affordable. This is a professional product and it really does the job of a professional amplifier. So really the price is justified if you think about the R&D and you think about the level of tone that you've got here. So the other thing I want to show you really quickly is this switch here, and then we're going to DI so you can hear what that sounds like as well. So amplifier, we're going to switch to A. Now this is going to our brown sound. Okay, so this is this tone capsule. And again, on a component level, it fundamentally changes the way the amp operates. Again, they've researched what that particular type of sound, how it's created. So everything has changed internally now. So have a listen to the difference. Again, let's do lead 1. So excuse the slight hiss. It's obviously a lot of gain. All amplifiers do that. And we'll go from internal to A. So here's internal. You'll notice there's a slight pause as it changes. These are not designed to be switched between on the fly. Now through to A. So for me, that rounds off the top end slightly, giving it that thicker brown sound kind of vibe, but you still got that unbelievably tight bottom end, that big old funk. So very impressive. And really, to have, it's effectively 2 amplifiers in one, or it could be 3 amplifiers in one if you had the other tone capsule as well. So the fact that you can re-voice everything like that is very, very cool indeed. And it's just a flick of a switch. Very, very simple indeed. All the controls still function the same way. You've got nothing new to learn. It's very easy to operate. Front panel's super simple. It just works like a normal amplifier. You don't need a degree in rocket science to operate this thing. Super easy, really. So that's how it sounds. Very impressed with how it sounds myself and how it reacts dynamically. You know, I think Boss are really onto something here. It's a very, very impressive product. Okay, so let's have a look at this control here, which is the one we left out. This is the line out airfield control, unique to this amplifier actually, and what this does is you've got that XLR out on the back and also the USB record out, which allows you to record the DI signal very, very easily. Now this control has 3 positions: rec, live and blend. Now in the rec mode, it's essentially like a studio mode. So it's a dry in terms of there's no extra added kind of air around the signal to give you that kind of live sound in this particular mode. If you want that, you just switch this to live and you get air around the signal as if you basically stuck a mic in front of it, because you're getting the actual speaker pushing air around. And it does change fundamentally how the actual speaker sounds. It sounds more, like they say, live, which is a good term for it. And then you can do a blend. So you get both of those together. So quite useful because you can really decide, do I want a very, very kind of studio, dead space kind of sound that I can then add lots of processing to if I so desire, or do I want a more kind of live sound? Now live would be super useful if you were, say, doing a gig and you wanted to run a mic monitor through here and also run a DI to the front of house. You can do both of those things, so that's super useful. Okay, so that's the DI.
My name's Tom Quayle, and I'll see you next time.